Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Union or Bust. You got Juan Perez here organizing Monster. No Chris Lopez, no your Union brother. Scratch that, we'll delete that, but we won't. Just leave it. Cool, so we have a special guest today. Today we're talking to Brandon Resenbeck, who's a rigger at the Old Globe Theater. We're going through contract negotiations later this year with the Old Globe, so we're ramping up the campaign. So Brandon, quickly just introduce yourself, a little background about yourself. What do you do at the Old Globe? And then we'll start there.
Cool, yeah, I'm the head flyman rigger for the Old Globe Theater. I load in the shows with Jillian Keller, who is our shop carpenter, and then I run the shows through the Old Globe. So if you don't know about the operations of what we do, and I started working as the lead rigger at the Old Globe in 2021. I think it was officially when I got hired on, but I've worked for the Globe itself since 2008.
Right.
As just a hand, and I've ran shows prior, like 2009, around then and stuff, but a while back, yeah. But that's
nice. So, how long have you been working with the local?
I've been working with the local since 2003, my junior year of high school. So I've started working with my dad at the San Diego Symphony, going and taking calls half days, doing the summer pops before the, summer pop, the shell was built.
Right.
And then, then once I showed interest, I kind of went away and did installing appliances for half a minute there, to get a different view of jobs. And then I came back and, with knowing that I wanted to be a stagehand, with different mentality, and then started looking for the career I wanted, and they all told me when I first started to be a rigger, so I just took it on.
So you've only had one other job or one other?
Yeah, before I took on one other job, left the local for a little bit, and then came back, because the older guy saying I didn't have the right mentality, and
really?
A little spoiled, you get, coming into it. I had a foot in the door and a good, work ethic, but I didn't know what I really had as a job at the local and opportunities that I could grab. I just thought, oh no, it was elsewhere. Young mentality.
Yeah, that's crazy. When I meet a lot of guys here at the local, and they tell me that this is one of their only jobs that they've ever had, like Richard, for example. To me, it's like crazy and surprising because I've had so many jobs since I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
It took me forever to actually settle down on a career for me. So it's interesting that a lot of people settle down with this kind of industry or job.
Yeah, it's funny because you feel like you get so many jobs with being what we call on the bounce anyway.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
It's constantly, this is the most stable position I've had at the Old Globe since joining the local, and it's very nice, I got to say. I can understand the stability and needing that to sustain a family and all that stuff is very helpful. The bounce can be very, difficult to gauge money-wise and hours and all that. So.
Right. And for people that don't really know what bounce is, what the word bounce, what is the bounce with us?
The bounce is with us, we take multiple calls from multiple venues. So if you could be dispatched from anywhere from the San Diego Convention Center to the Civic Theater to the Hotel del Coronado, anywhere in, our county's jurisdiction, which spreads pretty far now. And more than one in one day, even in that case. And so pay periods are different. You're looked at as a part-time employee in some of the pay periods, so you get taxed a little different. It's a tough thing to juggle. You can make a lot of money on the bounce, as they say, but you get taxed different. You got to watch how you're covering a family, because you can't just sit there and claim 5 on every single paycheck and expect you to be okay at the end of the year and not owe taxes. So there's so many sides of the coin of being through multiple employers. Like, for instance, I get 22 W-2s at the end of the year when I was naturally working. Anywhere from 18 to 22 W-2s a year.
When you were on the bounce.
When I was on the bounce. And now it's wonderful to have just one.
Just one?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a big change. It's definitely a shock for me as far as that goes. It helped me in a lot of ways, gear my energy in a productive way, I should say.
Right. Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life?
I said I was going to do 10 years with the Old Globe, and then I would question about whether being, but they're definitely, I was in such a different place, and I feel like all of my energy is being properly harnessed with the Globe. There's a lot that we can do to make that place better, and it was just, I think, ignored in both sides for so long. We all say it was management there at the Old Globe, or we say it was 122 and how they did things. It's like the older generation did what they had to do with the the Globe and the way they operated at the time. And, even the management there themselves had the same thing and the same mentality. And I think it's a new side now. We went through a lot of changes with the old Globe, and now that we're unionized, I think it's a big plus for them. And they have me because of it, because I had a problem with not being union, different pay periods. And I've vocalized that, somebody getting paid 16 an hour versus somebody getting paid 21 doing the same amount of work, but we called them apprentice.
Right.
It's like, okay, it gets a little washy. So with us being unionized now, it's that out of the way really helps us make sure and keep everybody's onus geared towards putting a show in, and
You know what I noticed? I helped organize Encore, and I noticed there's a little bit of a difference between AV, corporate world, to theater.
Yeah.
Like even how people get along, maybe. Have you noticed a difference since you've been on the balance? You've been everywhere.
Yeah, and the
here
AV
at the local.
guys, they know me, and I think it's the growing of the AV side, the need for as many AV guys as we need, and I don't think it's anything more than the reaction of the industry going the direction it is. Because before everybody was a stagehand, about being a stagehand. You weren't just a carpenter, you weren't just a rigger, you weren't just an electrician. You had to work for Local 122. You had to encompass all of that, or at least have it in your goal mindset, or tackle one department hard. AV wasn't considered a job, back in the day, but now that we all know it's a real job, so and I think that's what's changed. But I think there's practices in the AV side that can be brought over from the theater side. There's the learning on both sides of the coin, I believe. Not only the theater guys learning and stepping themselves up and learning AV, but I think the AV guys can learn about sight lines and other things that theaters bring, because you ignoring the drape in your room doesn't look visually well, just because you got the audio and the video running well. I mean, there's other things that we can take on both sides, and I've always tried to keep that sharp edge, because as Jeff Baxter and some of our guys said, the best thing we have to sell is ourselves. So let's be careful about how we think what we need in certain positions. And I feel like that's sometimes over-glorified versus remembering that, hey, I'm here to serve the show, through 122. So I'm not only representing myself, but I'm representing the show. So we have a lot of onus. And I feel like sometimes that's lost. Like, we get a little...
Right, speaking of Stephen Fink, you mentioned him earlier. We've had him on the podcast from Encore, and him and Race, and they were talking about this industry, like how it's very service oriented. It's not just putting up a show and that's it. Like you have to deal with clients, and you have to put up a show and make it look beautiful. And AV especially, they bring in a lot of money. So they're really responsible. You all are really responsible to put up a good show for people to get entertained. I remember when we were doing during the pandemic, and we were shut down, and I was interviewing some of our members, and Amanda Cohen, she came on, and then I asked her a few questions, and she would say things like that, like, we're the reason why people go on dates, like, or we're what put up a show for people that go on dates to have a good time. Like, we create memories putting up these great shows, and in theater especially, it's art. Oh, yeah. It's not just doctors coming in and try to sell prescription drugs, or pharmaceutical companies going into the convention center or hotels. It's you guys putting up a show that's beautiful. It took a lot of art into it. So that's why when I talk to theater people, you guys take a lot of ownership in those shows. Do you agree with that, or what do you think about that?
Oh yeah, I mean it's what you have a lot more ownership in the theater work than you do at a corporate event. As we've described it before, being on the balance or a corporate event is like putting Legos together. Well, we have the opportunity at the Old Globe to build Legos, to put them together for them to possibly grow and be something more. So that is what is more aspiration. There's more aspiration in the theater, especially at the Old Globe, because we build shows there, and we hope they go to Broadway and they become a big name. And that always has a kick down. If we do a good show, it could, really bring a lot of light to the Old Globe Theater, which would bring a lot of light to 122 as well.
And what do you mean by building a show at the Old Globe?
So, for instance, we're doing, we'll be doing, like a production will come through, like they want to do a new piece, like Destiny of Desire or something. I think that was on a Tony up for a Tony. I don't know what.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's certain shows that get put up for lighting and certain designs through the Old Globe Theater. the Civic Theater, for instance, they're already built Broadway shows. So the Lion King or something like that started somewhere in a smaller theater because it was an idea. I mean, sometimes you got fully advanced shows, like they know this show is going to launch. You know, it came from Disney or something like that. They know it's going to be a big name. They put a lot of money in it. But, you know, there's always that hope. So all these small theaters do all these in hopes that they make a big Broadway name. And they say that Jersey, you know, Jersey Boys or something came out of so-and-so, like whatever theater, you know, so, and that's what these smaller art theaters like La Jolla just won. The Outsiders just won, you know.
And that came out of the La Jolla Playhouse?
La Jolla Playhouse, so that won Best Musical. So those are, and that was built by 122. So that's you know,
so
there's
cool.
a lot of people that feel really close to that because they just watched it on TV. It's like, I had a hand in that.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, and, you know, I'm numb from it being through the generation I have. We're not here to, you know, be glorified in that. That was Outsiders. We're here to provide for that artist or that person. So I kind of have a two side of the coins. I don't try to make myself too like, oh, excited about these things because I'm here to provide, you know, and make that person's dream come true. I'm not that dream, or I'm not that, you know, I wasn't handpicked. And that's where, because I don't want to take away, I think, from each show. Like sometimes we do, I feel, get a little too handsy and be like, I had a hand in this. It's like, no, we did naturally, you know.
Well, it's kind of like when you watch a TV show or a movie. At the end of the credits, it'll have a list of the grips and the lighting people, and so it's something similar to that effect. No, it made it to Hollywood, so
exactly, and that's that, you know, and that's where we try to boost everybody's great ideas.
Right. Really maybe you're just humble.
Does. Yeah.
Maybe you're just humble and you just, but that's cool. I didn't know any of that. Like, as in, you guys build a show from scratch. I've heard of that, but I didn't really understand what that meant. By you explaining it like that, like, we build it from scratch and with the hopes that it makes it on Broadway.
Yeah, and then you create. It's like there's an abrasiveness to it. So it's like that's where the theater seems like it's harder in some cases because everybody says, oh, it's difficult at the theater. We work so hard. It's like, no, because you'll build a set, you'll be halfway building it, and then all of a sudden the guy goes, no, the drawings are trash. Like, really? We got to redo this. The guy wants to rip out this. So sometimes half the work you've just done is going to go away and get thrown out. And you got to rebuild it. And this is the designing process sometimes that some people have a hard time with it, especially, you know, even the older folks. Some of them had a really difficult time. Like, you know, one of the old jokes, I'll throw it out there, is Tony Chambers he started off the Old Globe, he started throwing 3/4 sheets, full sheets of plywood in the trash. And then the boss came around and goes, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm just cutting off to the chase and throwing the first piece away. So, you know, it's, and you know, and I mean, we sometimes we have to build things. We have to get to a certain point with certain things, especially because we're doing it for the first time in theater. You know, it's like they want to create an idea, and it's never been done before. So we're gonna go and dance that line. And some people look at that as like, oh, this is crazy, or I look at it as like, this is amazing. Like, what are we gonna try to do? It's like, sign me up.
That's interesting. Like you build something, and sometimes it gets thrown away. You got to start from scratch, and it can be frustrating. And then when I hear people in the hotels like, we got to reset this ballroom up. I'm sure it's something similar, but it's not at that level where it's like, dude, what the fuck? We just poured in maybe a whole week or 2 weeks worth of work.
Yeah, where the house set up the room backwards, and all of a sudden you got to rebuild it because you walked in and the house set the chairs up the wrong way the first time, so then you got to reflip the room.
Oh, shit.
I've been on all the AV calls, so we all have the same issue.
Right.
I think that's where the older guys, I got to say the older generation, was always trying to get us to realize that it's all the same and the same. It's just different problems. But we will arise the same issues because we're in show business. So it's like, you know, everything in the avenues happens so fast on paper, and then when it comes to reality, it's like, oh, we didn't see that obstacle. And that's, you know, and those come in every single. I just think it's more fun in theater. The obstacles are a lot more fun, I should say. It can be more dangerous in cases, but you know.
Yeah, so you like theater more than working in AV.
I've always kept my hand in the theater. I was going to say, you know, AV pays the bills, and you know, and same with convention center work, and you know, it pays well. You know, it's where the money is. So you know, it's unfortunate that theater doesn't have the money there, because I feel that theater people are more skilled than.
Not a competition.
Yeah.
No, it is. Oh shit. Jeff Baxter is.
Well, he's a theater guy. I mean, he's, you know, so it's like
most of the OGs came from theater.
They all stagehands. That's you know, that's where we encompass. So that's why it's like Jeff can't argue the fact that you know, all we have to sell is us.
Right.
So it's like, yes, we want to aspire to be the best of all of us. Even Will Slater and family and everybody else is aspired. They will learn. Like Will Slater learned lighting before he became an AV air projectionist. Paul McDonald worked in the opera shop. Shannon Worsham worked in the opera shop. A lot of these guys started out in theater. So it's it's not like it's just they don't need to. They pay where the money is, and you can't hate on that.
Right. Yeah. I know. I remember like Nate Woods. Yeah. He told me like, yeah, man, you learn in theater. You learn with me over here at in Escondido. Then you can be an AV. You can do whatever. You can do anything out there now.
Playback pro, any of that. I mean, it's minuscule when you start coming down to it. And especially the problems and the stress level that you deal with running shows.
Right.
Because that's a whole other aspect of theater that some people love or hate.
Right.
And you got to learn a show. It's like some people don't understand. Like, so you basically get a sheet and you have step by step of what you do during the show. So, and it's all time coded and everything. So if you don't hit your marks on your things, you're messing up the actor's show, and you're messing up the whole timing of audio, lighting, projection, everything. So, and that stress can be too much for some people. And,
I can see that.
There's a buffer in AV. There's a buffer in the convention center world in general. There are contingency plans for people being maybe not as building as fast, or whatever the case may be. They get extra connectors, so they don't have a problem with things. It's like, it's a different world, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. So honestly, like the main reason we have you on this podcast is we're educating the public on who we are as a stagehands union, what we do, and also what the Old Globe is. So we talk a little bit about the Old Globe? I know we started talking about them, but where's the Old Globe located? How many theaters they have? Because they have different theaters in the Old Globe. And how busy are they year-round?
The theaters really, there's 3 theaters. Let's start with that. There's the main stage, the White Theater, which is a round theater arena setup, and then we have the Old Globe Festival stage, which is the outdoor theater. And those are running. The festival runs just for the summer, which is Shakespeare mostly, which is running Henry VI right now, and then we have the White Theater, which is kind of dormant but runs like outside theater events. We have a lot of like outreach programs that I don't want to misspeak the Old Globe has. There's a lot of not so publicized work that we do that runs around, and then we have the main stage that's running Fat Ham right now, and they've been running. They rebuilt the White. Let's get it this way: basically the Old Globe has donors, and the donors pay into idea that the Globe wants to do. So they do Shakespeare, they do theater, and they have rules that they go by and that we have to abide by, in a sense, that the donors want to create. So we do all the theaters and the things, and they always have a plan set up for the year. And this is open because they're a nonprofit, so they do a talk, and you can hear about their whole plan for 2025 and further on when it comes up, and they're open to speaking about it. But they go, and we basically do that plan, and we step by step try to figure out where our obstacles are for each show, and making sure that they don't overlap. But it's very difficult sometimes because we got to keep business running. So sometimes you got the White Theater loading in at the same time as the main stage or this festival. So it's like they try to make it to where we can load in without it all colliding into itself. But they've been doing schedule changes and things like that with the industry changing, but that's the 3 theaters, and that's the Old Globe's like hiring or show booking mentality. They change it based on the industry really and what's out there. If there's full productions,
is it like I didn't grow up with theater. I didn't grow up liking theater. I just didn't like. I grew up in City Heights, and we just liked action movies and and Comic-Con and things like that, right? Pokemon. But theater, like, is there still an appetite for theater? Like, do you believe it's growing, or what do you think that's like?
The Grinch, for instance, is a good example.
It always sells out, right?
And they were having before COVID, it was actually going down a little bit, and then whether it was the new movies that came out of the Grinch or whatever, they started boosting in sales, and it was some of the record sales that we've had through the Old Globe. There's a huge appetite. I think it's growing. It's changing, definitely, because we're doing more projection and video in theater as well.
Really?
Like, for instance, Henry VI has video outside. So we got video panels and we got projection that we're going to be video mapping on the set.
Nice.
So there's new worlds of things that we're going to be getting in with video overlapping with theater in general. So it's going to be, there's going to be waters where we cross, and it's going to be good. But Yeah, the Old Globe. I think it's tough because theater isn't something that a lot of people will go and pay that type of money to go and see, not understanding all the background of what theater is. And with technology growing, it's a lot different. But I think it's growing in the sense that people are more interested in our what we do as stagehands. So it's really grabbing people more.
Okay. So people understanding what a stagehand is growing interest in theater?
Yeah, because it's like every time I talk about something like an aspect of the show or something, or whether we fly somebody or like something happens, it's like they go, oh, well, I'm more interested in that aspect of the show. And so it's like people finding out that there's more gags and tricks in theater, and they're like, oh, that'll grab me, and I'll go to that. And the Globe does a lot of that. Got a lot of visuals, and
Yeah. So I mean, Thane, Thane. Yeah. I've talked to him before, and when he's at the Civic.
Yeah.
And he said to me that a lot of like shows that are coming into the Civic Theater, one day comedy shows and stand up and things like that normally wouldn't be in the theater.
Yeah.
Is that happening also at the Old Globe?
It's no. I think we're still booking shows. They're more. What is it called? We're not creating as many shows as we used to. So the donors are like pulling back in a sense, and that's why a lot of theaters are shutting down as well, because there is a big pullback in the donors spending money, a big shift in that. Where it's headed, nobody really knows, but it's the lack there of money in all the theaters and the arts in general. So that's going to leak into the places like the Civic Theater that don't produce and just do run out shows like Lion King. And so the aspiration to do new work is still there. Like Beetlejuice was a good one, but they used to pump out, it seemed like, Broadway shows every second. But that is because the donors were putting the money in, and there was an aspiration by big money. So I don't know if it's shifting in the sense that the interest isn't there as much. It's really weird. It'd be interesting to see, because we are seeing a hit in our industry and the Globe in general. I mean, the Globe's doing really well. I mean, if you look at the numbers for the Globe compared to others, I mean,
you guys work like almost every day of the year.
Yeah, we got a full-time job. There's no question about it. And they and they have it set up to where we have plans through 10 years.
Oh wow!
It's like, they don't mess around. Yeah, so it's they got endowments, and they got donors, but it's about how big we'll operate, because it's things are shrinking in theater, and that's everybody's seeing that. But the ticket sales are amazing me, I got to say, because it's just, as far as they talk about it too, the regular the thing that changed is single ticket sales went up. So people aren't buying the yearly annual tickets, so they're just not buying the package deal, which is still a good deal. It's like $109 through the Old Globe, and you get to see all 16 shows that run through
for $110.
Yeah, something that's
crazy.
Not bad. Yeah, it's really good, and it's a certain seating area. It's excluded at certain areas, but it's still a really good.
Is it behind like a pillar or something? Because I've been to the Old Globe.
50 or something. I can't remember how much it was. It was but it was No, you're not behind a pillar.
Yeah.
There's there's some seating that are just like we look at it and go like, okay.
Oh really?
It's
because I've been to it, and it looks pretty tight.
But we're the biggest nitpickers.
That's
it's
true.
like so it's like if somebody be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like
when on a personal level, like when you go to shows, do you point things out like, oh, look at that light, or look at that rig, or anything like that?
Personally, I don't go to too many shows. I gotta like it. I got to see a lot of fun stuff. And, working in the
like
industry,
live, like there, because you worked it.
Like I gotta say, one of the funnest things is Conan show. Running that with.
That happened here?
Comic-Con. When
Gotcha. Oh, that's right.
When I was running those and helping run that was some of the funnest theater I've, or just work in general, which is mostly TV theater overlap, corporate world. It's, it's a different aspect, but that was some, we get really cool opportunities, and I just got to say, they always seem like the coolest and the funnest opportunities come out of the theaters.
Yeah.
The cookie cutter stuff comes out of the convention center and the hotels.
Gotcha.
And that's just, we do crazy stuff at the convention center, so I don't want to discredit it, because we'll do fun things, and even like TwitchCon and stuff is pretty cool setups that we have, but it's not like, for instance, Fat Ham, for instance, I got to, this is me, Brandon, going off on my thing, fly a sheet. Okay, so they basically said they want to fly a sheet. At the top of the show, they wanted a ghost, and they wanted the ghost to start off with a sheet just flying off the mantle. well, they asked me how to do that. That's what the stagehands are for. So I started to come up with, I tried to use the LA and the New York's option of how they did it. And I couldn't get their system to work as well as I wanted to. I mean, I got it to work, but I just didn't like how it worked. So I scrapped it, and I came up with my own idea. And I got it running so well that they even wanted to explore going further to ideas they couldn't accomplish in LA and New York.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty cool when we create things. It's like, oh, well, why did you do that? Well, this guy here helped you. So it's like that, to me, or those moments are more inspiring and exciting to me than the other, oh, well, I did this name show this time. It's like, no, they gave Brennan a red ball and he ran with it. I got to rig a sheet and rip it through the ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun to do, I think, things like magic in our theater, like flying a woman in cabaret, and knowing how to work that system, or figuring out how to work that system, or doing something completely different that nobody's ever done before, and getting great minds alike trying to think about something and create it.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome putting things together and see it come to fruition. I had a hand in that, like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But then you have to be creative because nothing is cookie cutter, like you said. It's not like in AV, when I go to the convention center, a lot of times they have like templates and everything. Just follow this by the T and you're good to go. Like, that's it. It's what it is. It's in the box and you just unravel it.
Yeah.
And for sometimes, I'm not saying all the times.
Oh, no, I hear you. Yeah.
But in the theaters, you just have to make it happen kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever you have there.
Yeah, I mean, we've had you have moments like that in the corporate world where they'll say, Coy Lopez will come to me and say, Brandon, listen, you're going to take a 10-footer, you're going to connect it to another 10-footer, you're going to connect, you're like, listen, we're not jumping 30 10-footers for these sound delays, are we? And he goes, yeah, we are. And I mean, it's like, you're like going and like, wow, this is a different kind of hurt, but, but not creating like the hurt that the old Globe gives you, where it's, if you look at it that way, it's not hurt like painful. It's like, you really have to use all of your energy. And, like you said, I'm sure in your job, like you gotta manifest, you gotta take something that somebody just said to you and create it. Like Robert comes to you and says, now I want this vision. And there's no blueprints.
Exactly.
That takes physical, mental, it takes a lot of energy.
A little bit of research.
Education too.
Yeah.
It feels the same way.
Okay, cool. So a little sidetrack, because you brought this up before we started recording, the Encore PSAV. That you were one of the main riggers, so Encore, PSAV, AV companies, and the hotels, and you did a little bit of that before the old Globe.
Yeah.
So you said you helped a little bit with organizing PSAV at the time, and how was that? I want to see a little bit of your backstory.
Well, it was getting to everybody to get along. It was because really it was like a pointing fingers game. Like you were against 122, and it was like everybody was against it. It's like, oh, this guy's siding so and so, because there was a lot of like throwing under. You got to be careful. Don't because if so and so find out that you're going to sign up for 122, they might fire you, but they'll do it on the sly or they'll set you up. So it was a lot of game playing and silliness. At the beginning, but it was good to talk to everybody because everybody didn't really understand, I think, the 122 and how we operated. We're a bunch of old jerks is what we were looked at before when we first started, and especially in the hotels and stuff. So it was intimidating, and we, I think, had the wrong mentality of 122. It's 122 is to facilitate the people that work for it. I think sometimes people think that we're like corporate 122, or we're like, we get this idea of like, well, 122 said that this is the way. It's like, no, this is just somebody that cares a lot, is trying to do their job the best they can and made a decision. Right. So sometimes people think there's this corporate overlord of 122 creating all these decisions, and that's not how this works. And so, breaking that down with PSAV and going forward was really like the biggest issue. And I got to say, it was a lot of fun because I got to stay in the hotels. A lot of the riggers were jealous because I stayed away from the arena a lot at the time. And they vocalized it as well at the time, saying that you better go back and do some real hard work, Yeah. And Thane was basically handing me the hotel so that we could facilitate it and talk and keep everybody good, make sure that the TDs that were working on the hotels were okay and not raising any red flags as far as that goes. Because they were the biggest avenue of, they would dump their whole crew list basically.
Right.
And then just educating people because, when they recruited through PSAV, like a recruiting officer would give somebody a PSAV job, they'd say it was right next to McDonald's and Jack in the Box. So it's like they were clocking that job as like a very low end paying job and just baiting people. You know how to hook up a Nintendo 64 or PlayStation? You got this, man.
Yeah.
And so they baited. It's like I get paid to hook up DVD players, and well, I mean that was way back at the time, you know, and switchers and Playback Pro and everything else that we actually do. So it wasn't just doing rigging, you know, in the hotels with everybody. It was also I got you guys on the AV side too if you want, because they weren't hiring us as much on the AV side. They were hiring in-house. So we were trying to get our hand in the in-house work as well. So our avenue was the rigging, because rigging is always our avenue with anything in organizing, because they need skilled labor in that sense, and you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So you were going to the hotels and talking to the PSAV guys, educating them, setting up the groundwork to organize them.
Correct.
Essentially. Oh wow, I didn't even know that part.
So yeah, and it was fun to work with a lot of the names that were, you know, most of them know me. It's like, you know.
Oh, okay.
So they'll know. It's like when we worked back, and it was a good time. And you know, John Phipps is the regional rigger for PSAV, I think, still. So he's the one. We were good buds. We worked a lot together, and he would, you know, he would trust me. He was great. And a lot of the other guys would trust it. It was a good time. It was it was a good way to operate. But then when Richard came in, we dropped it. I felt like it was necessary to help move everything forward, because it was, you know, we were in a place where we needed to hire more call stewards, and we needed to book things differently, and it was a growing process, and I think it was a good shift anyways, because it went to different roads anyways, so it was, a lot of people did, that's for sure.
Yeah, what I did understand when I started here in 2019 and started organizing PSAV, I understood. Richard told me it wasn't the first attempt we were going to take at it. It was like the third one, I think, by that time.
Rough, yeah.
So, but there were already cards signed. There were already people there.
Yeah, I started passing out cards, I think, at the beginning. Well, no, it was a little bit later. And then closer to Richard, I think I handed out a few more cards to sign to fill out. But nobody filled them out in front of me. Everybody was still very apprehensive about it. That's why I kept telling everybody to go to the hall and talk to them, find out. It's just people that care. There's no corporate overlord. It's like, you know.
I think that's education right there, because
that really is.
Like the union, anti-union campaigns, it's always a union's a third party. The union's coming in, the union's doing this, the union's going to be getting between you and your employer.
Yeah.
We're always the union, but in reality, like everybody's the union. Like you're the union, I'm the union, we're all the union, and we get a say in the decision-making process. We go to membership meetings, we go to e-board meetings, we get to vote on things, on our leadership, on our trusts, on people that make decisions. So that's just a education piece, honestly. But when I came in and I started organizing PSAV at the time, I already had like a foot in the door because I had cards signed already. So that's what I started with. Is Sean Goodman.
Sean's great, yeah.
You remember Sean Goodman?
Yeah, Sean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was one I worked with at the very beginning.
Oh, really?
He was saying whether it was going to work or not, and I would always ensure him that it was because you want it to work, it will. That's just how it all works. It's like, because once you start getting people to understand that it's just to better your pay, because they're getting theirs. Like it's like trust me. It's like, and I know it's the corporate world, they always try to make it paint a different way. It's like, don't look at that. It's like, because you're here, and that's what ultimately, as I try to focus people, is focus on your work, because ultimately they can't say anything once you do that. And if you do good work, they have to put something down, like, because you're here to do that. So and I think it's reassuring people, and having people. Sean was great, though.
Yeah, Sean was great. He ended up leaving because of the pandemic. We shut down in 2020. He went out of town. I think he went to Washington, D.C. But he was one of my main guys. Like, he made not everything, but a lot of the things happen behind the scenes, along with Ed and Ramsey.
Those guys were great.
Yeah, like they just had it. Like, I felt like before the pandemic, these guys stayed there. They loved their work, and they knew everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody respected these leaders that I had in this organizing campaign. Then when the pandemic hit and we came back, it's a little bit different. What I see is going on with Encore. At the time, like, it's a lot more turn and burn than what it was before. So the retention rate is super low. So that's the issues that we're having right now with Encore. But yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that you helped out with PSAV. It
was good times at the time. Yeah, a lot of Kellen was one of the PSAV TDs. There's a lot of good people around at the time. It was fun.
It's a small industry too. Like, this industry is small. A lot of theater people know AV people that know people that do concerts, and then people just bounce around from 122 to these non-union companies.
Oh yeah, the connection between theater and stuff. Trevor Hayes, one of the guys that used to work at the prop shop. He works overseas a lot, and then happened to run into a guy from New York, which is Glenn and Chip. They were the guys that did the Conan show. So how they collided in paths, who knows? It's wild how the industry just all somehow connects.
Yeah.
In general.
Do you travel?
Sure.
Do you?
I never liked to travel. I've never with family and everything. And I mean, I'm not a big money grabber, on the road kind of guy. I felt like there's never enough money anyway. So.
Right.
So it's like, because I'd always say, would you go on the road? I go, if you give me $1,000 a day, and they're like, well, that's not worth. You're not gonna ever get that. And I go, well, I'm not leaving. So it's like, because it's got to, it
has to be worth it.
It really does, and I think that we're jaded. I feel in our industry, and we are still in many ways. We think it's okay because we've been doing it that way for a long time. And there's a lot of those things that we do, and it's like in those practices that we just need to keep on. There's a reason why we carry the deck with 4 people. But I think it's great that Nathan Herenstein and everybody with the education that we're doing, that's going to further along with OSHA and everything else. And I mean, it was one of those things my dad always talks about. He goes, well, OSHA's got to look into why all these guys retired early at one point. I mean, you got to think that's got to trigger some kind of warning. And I was like, that's a good point, Dad. Because why are they going out with rotator cuffs? Why are they going out with all these injuries from, a job that supposedly we're doing in safe practices? I mean, so it's definitely something to look at in the future. And we are. With education, that'll fix it all.
Well, everything evolves.
Yeah, it does.
Everything evolves.
We're still a new industry, and in general, I always tell people.
Well, this local got chartered in 1905.
Yeah, so it's a little over 100 years, yeah.
Yeah, just 100 years. So it's
really.
one lifetime, really.
Yeah.
A lifetime and some change.
Yeah.
But since since you've been here with the local, has a local evolved? Has a local change? Have you seen the demographic change? Because a lot. I'm the union organizer, so a lot of the circles that I'm in is very political, and it's very like in politics you try to evolve. Everything evolves basically, and we want to make it more inclusive, bring more people in that naturally weren't in this industry. Have you seen that change, that shift within this local? It was a male-dominated industry, and I think it still is from when I see the membership. But what do you think? Like, has it evolved? Has it evolved for the greater good, or what changes have you seen that you agree with or not agree with?
Well, there's it seems like but before, when it was like before me, it was the good old boys club kind of thing. It was like you had to get along with certain people or you didn't work. There was an understanding of that, but that was, that wasn't just our industry. That was all industries at that time, back in the day. But, moving forward, I think it's one of those things where it's really tough because you have to have faith in people that have never touched this work before. So, and that's where I feel like some of our older guys and somewhat older new guys, because they haven't necessarily learned as long. So it's like the layer of not trusting each other is just getting worse. So then it just creates these like convoluted politics that we all fall on, and we're just sitting here pointing fingers, and it's happened. I think it already started before COVID because everybody was trying to point. It's like no, we just need to face it. We do not have enough people, period. So I think that's the first realization that we need to have is that there's not enough people in the industry. So I think that means as leads we have to have more faith. And see, that's one of the things that I always loved about my dad and he taught me is that you could take a group of people that have never done this work before, and as long as you stay by your safe practices and you work at a driven pace towards the job, it'll get done. Like he did the summer pops one time, the build that we do, and it takes about 3 weeks to do that pop-up tank. And he did it with a non-regular, per se, quote-unquote, crew, that was through 122, and we had to get the rump end of the roast, as my dad would say, when we loaded in the summer pops because Anheuser-Busch was having a huge show at the convention center. Everybody wanted the money, and you can't blame him. My dad loaded in that show the fastest he's ever loaded it in. He had even non-union members coming up to him and saying that would never work for the local again because of certain people that work for us, but shake his hand and say thank you. It was the best experience I've had through Local 122. So I think it's just one of those things as leads that not only do we have to trust our other leads and what their decisions are and what their repercussions may be, but I think it has to go further. So we have to layer this trusting status because we are so short on labor. And I don't like it either. Sometimes I do have to redo something because so-and-so made the wrong decision. But guess what? They learned a lesson that day and we can move forward, and it's not the end of the world. It really isn't.
Right.
Yeah, we do act like it is. Boy, sometimes I feel
You feel like choking somebody?
someone
sometimes?
else needs to be in charge next time. Yeah. It's like, because
Nice.
they just let this guy fall on his face like that. It's like, so, and that makes me, I feel like the leads really, we need to stop pointing fingers and we need to step up. We got twice as much work to do. I mean, and that's not just because our industry is going, and also we've lost people, but the dynamic of what we do has changed. We're adding things without taking them per account. It's like, some of the things that used to be small, but it's going to get worse as we go on with AI and everything else.
Right.
Like ARS, the voting thing. Well, it wasn't, they added labor before, and then the labor for ARS kind of went away, and it was like, oh, well, now that's just a part of AV. And it's like, well, how multi-source are we going to get now? It's like, so you could go and say it's the same. I feel like it's, at one point we have to, there is a realistic stance in it, and I think we have to find that as leads, and then we just have to start, implementing these things and getting leads on board, and stop being so political and be like, this is our job, like, because it really it lays it out really if you just look at the work. I mean, it's like people.
Yeah, that's I think that's everywhere. It's like lack of leadership will affect everything negatively, but if there's good leadership, then you're going to shape up the next generation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turn and burn with Encore. I just mentioned it. So there's always like, even some of the leads quit because they can't afford rent in San Diego making $20 an hour. Like, what do you expect them to do? Like, of course they're going to quit. They're going to learn the skill real quick, and then they're going to make connections, and then we're like, oh, I can go to that company now, Pinnacle or AVMS, and make $5 more doing the same exact work, or work out of the hall and make more money.
Yeah.
So I think right now we're in the critical stage in our industry with our union, maybe, that we've grown so much under Richard and previous BAs to where we're catching up to that, maybe.
Yeah.
The pandemic hit. The work was crazy in 2021 when we came back. It was nuts. And then so a lot of people joined the local. They were green. We're sending people that didn't know how to coil cable.
Yeah.
So, of course, people that are veterans like yourself are like, what the fuck's going on here?
Oh, yeah.
But I think we're stabilizing now.
Yeah.
Do you see that out there in the field? Like, we're stabilizing finally this year?
I think it's that, and people are realizing that this is all there is. I mean, because I think it's something that we've done too, because just in the economy in general, we have a lot of people that are, applying for jobs to launch themselves to another job, like you kind of said, or, boost themselves up enough knowledge-wise on this so they can go and do whatever their buddies already told them they need. Because the industry out on the bounce or out in other states is just as bad. So it's like, hey, get a clue a little bit, and you can leave the state and get a good job over here. So it's tough in that, because you got tenfold with everything else. But the leads, I think it's just it's a matter of being patient and diligent. I mean, and then I think there's only so much we can do. So it's like at some point, I think we just have to like keep at it. It's like one of those like, you're moving dirt a lot, and I mean, but
That's
you know,
true.
it just is that way. And I don't like this isn't the only industry. I mean, you talk to other industries like framers, plasterers, all of them are dealing with a somewhat similar situation. So. But yeah, I do feel like we are leveling out. I think people just need to look at it a little different, like you said. I think there's more opportunities out there, and I keep trying to tell all the younger folks, this is a great time to learn things and tackle those opportunities. Because I swear, if I see somebody with a clue, I'm going to throw you right under, and you're going to be a lead.
Robert Morales, our BA, I always say the same thing. I always copy him when I meet new people. He said that this is the best part-time job you'll ever have.
That's the old,
what do you think about that?
That's the old guys always used to say.
So I took it from somebody else.
There's a lot of truth in that. I think it's something that you should take, because in our job you get baited. You think you made $15,000 in 1 month and you're good to go. It's like, no, you're about to make $3,000 the next month. So that's actually spread out in 2 months. So it's like, that's where that idea, it is the best part-time job. You do get a lot of time off, but you got to learn to manage your money like it's a part-time job. And it is. It could be a full-time job if you have the right attitude. And there's opportunities to make full-time jobs out of it as well. You not just being an electrician, not just being a rigger, not just being a carpenter. If you can do everything like a stagehand, you have a full-time job. I mean, and that's why they say it's the best part-time job, because we have a lot of people that are just departmentalized. They just want to do audio. They just want to do this. And so That's how I see that comment is, right? It's got a double side to it. I think it's a great thing, and at the same time, you can make it a full-time job if you really wanted to.
Right. So the Old Globe, let's go back to the Old Globe real quick. So we're going to go through contract negotiations later this year. How's the vibe out there? Are you excited for this? The contract that you guys are under right now, not the legacy one, but the newer one, was the first contract for the other crew. How do you see it coming up? Are there a lot of things you guys are going to fight for on this next one? How's the vibe out there in the field?
I think it's mixed. Everybody wants more money. You know, it's tough right now. It's hard, but I think there's a lot of logistics with the Globe that need to be worked out. Like, you know, not avoiding meal penalty, but not using it as like a tool of reasoning, or there's so many things that need to be resolved that are just already kind of resolved in the industry in general, but just aren't either accepted as practices or aren't understood through management. So I think there's a lot of like getting to understand, like, you know, just logistic issues, like just running shows, like when does electricians do certain things? It's like, so they got to merge too, because it's two contracts. So we got to merge to one. So that's going to be a tough thing to deal with too, because there's two sides of the coin. Like, I get a premium show rate for when I do shows, you know, and right now there's a 4-hour minimum for the other contract of people that aren't leads. So, which I feel is the toughest thing personally for me to stomach when we talk about getting rid of show calls, or the show calls are being messed with, because there's a lot more meaning behind the show calls just being a single rate, a flat rate, I should say. But, you know, there's a lot of anxiousness, I think. It's like to find out what the Old Globe's going to do. You know, to me, it's one of those things where it's just pay up. You know, I mean, we've provided. I have a hard time having silly conversations and negotiations get into those silly conversations. It's kind of cut and dry to me. We've provided the labor you wanted, and we've missed here and there like any other person would, you know, in any industry, with our booking and stuff like that. You can nitpick all day on things like that, but to me, it's getting management there to tell the donors to pay what we need to operate a normal industry. And, I mean, negotiations to me just drive me nuts, because it's an area standard. There's a certain amount that we get paid based on our industry and how much we need to live here, and we pretend like there's no answers for that. So negotiations, really, I have a hard time talking about it, because you're talking about like who, you know, it's like if you were as a person that was starting out today for the Globe and you wanted them to work for you today under the wages they have, just starting, you're not going to facilitate the next 10 years. You know, you're not going to create new leads. You're not going to create new employers that want to stay here. And that's why it's dwindling. It's, you know, and that happens with everything. It's just like the leads in a sense. You know, why are we wondering why leads are going away? Because it's not paying enough for the stress level that they're enduring. I care personally about our job and what I do is my work, so it doesn't just take money. But, you know, so, and that's where I feel like, you know, that's where we're dealing with that as well, is like some people need to be paid to care enough. So we got some things to deal with today, and I personally think that the Old Globe, we need to focus more on logistics. Like, we need to get certain things knocked down. We need to combine the contract. I think this year is really about like getting everything together, getting the whole team together in general, because we operate, as the Globe would say, as a team, yet we have two separate contracts. I mean, when we talk about inclusion, yet we separate our employers. I mean, you want me to get into reality of conversations with certain things. It's really difficult sometimes. It's like, how you didn't ask the dude how he ate yesterday. You know, it's like I used to bring extra snacks on the bounce, you know, when I was having my lunch pail. So if so-and-so was hungry, I could give them a bar, so at least they'd be worth a damn for the rest of the day. I mean, corporate people just don't care to have the real conversation. It's all about mingling, politics, and things like that. And nobody likes talking to me, because I'm going to just say, hey, dude, there's an area standard. Check it out. A projectionist costs this. I mean, and then when they go, why can't we get projectionists at the Old Globe Theater? It's like, oh, well, you know, here's the number, that the standard number of living, and set aside cost of living. I mean, it's like, we always just like bar these things, and it drives me nuts.
It's kind of like, so I just did an episode this last Saturday. We brought on two professors from USD DC
Oh, nice.
that are organizing. They're actually having their union election tomorrow, non-tenured track professors.
Oh, wow.
So one of them was talking about how during Cesar Chavez Day, they had a Cesar Chavez event. They had videos. They talked about the farm workers, how he fought for workers' rights. And then they're over here trying to ask for like wage increases. And they're like, okay, but not for you guys.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. Like, okay, but this conversation is here because they want to feel good about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And then it looks good if somebody takes a picture that they have Cesar Chavez on the background. But when your workers are asking that question, then it's like, oh, but not you guys, kind of deal. So maybe it's something like that with the Old Globe is like you have to have the real conversation. If you really say that you care about me, this is what I need to care. Like, this is what I need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And like right now, the first contract got signed in 2020.
Yeah.
And it's about to expire. What was negotiated then is no longer a reality now. Like, maybe it was like, maybe I can get away with 23, 25, 26 bucks an hour back then, but now inflation has gone ridiculous these past few years to where the cost of living skyrocketed, gas, you name it, food is ridiculous right now.
It's insane.
I just spent like $70 going to Vaughn's and I only bought like 5 different things, and it's crazy.
It's insane to just manage all that. I mean, and then the conversations just get silly. So they'll throw the arts at us and they'll say, oh, well, this is a nonprofit organization, yet, so-and-so is being paid such amount. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like playing, Sim City, and you sit there and you keep ignoring the plumbing, and you wonder why your city is going to crap. I mean, it's like it drives me nuts, and I always say it too. It's like it's bad business not paying the right amount, and not paying enough, and that's what skilled labor costs is good money. I mean, so it and I get it. We've changed and we've geared different, but the conversation I think needs to shift, and this is in all industries. It said, who has to lose for somebody to gain? I think that's our biggest issue, is always like so-and-so has to lose. No, the only person losing is CEOs. I mean, we need to lose their number because we operate as theater. Like, so for us to sit there and say that only 20% operates the Old Globe, but 99% of all the work comes out of that 20%. Like, that's wild.
Right, yeah.
It's like, that's just doing, they do simple math, let me do simple math.
Right.
The other way. They don't want to look at that. And that's where it's like there's no conversation then. Like, to me, that's why we have negotiation lawyers. That's why we should go to the international and talk about things like that later on with our negotiations, because we have tools through our international, and they stack the deck when it comes to those Freeman contracts sometimes, and we're out of our league. We're just people trying to do good work.
Right.
I mean, and they sit there and they'll do things that are mind-boggling. It's like, and that's where I get bothered with conversations.
I think that's like a corporate greed kind of deal, as in like it's every corporation with that same mindset with the CEO thing. Oh, yeah. I mean, back in the 60s, if I remember correctly, CEO to worker pay ratio was like 33-1. Yeah. Now it's like 300-1. So, but that's across the board. It's not just
it's gross.
The Old Globe. It's also Freeman, and then especially Encore, big old corporations like that. Yeah. So we're dealing with like a big old corporate problem. It's not just one corporation. And that's why I believe like unions are here to balance that.
Yeah.
Balance that. And it's crazy how you're so passionate and you love this stuff, and it's in your DNA, it's in your blood. Right? And then not everybody has that though, that's in the field. Like, nobody has experience with unions at this point. I
wish they could see what we were. Because it's like it's almost like it's not to show it off, but just like to see the expectation that we lived by. And it wasn't written. It's like I always say, it's like some of the stuff is nomenclature. Like when you said get something, they knew it encompassed XXX. So it's like so even our work practices have to be broken down to a nauseating point to where I have to break down every step of this thing because so-and-so wants to understand. And that can be very frustrating for leads, let alone we can have loose ends, we can misspeak, and then they're questioning you because they're smart. So then you as a lead go, do I even want to start teaching people anymore? So you have, I mean, layers of knowledge that have just been lost because of an industry growing as fast as it did and people retiring as fast as they did. And it's not just because it's like I said, it's the dangle of the carrot. It's because of our industry. It really gets you. Oh, I get to work with so and so. This is gonna be good.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so no, I'll take 6 jobs all week. I'll work till 3 a.m. and I'll make it to the convention center the next day. Don't worry, I got it. So you do ungodly hours. So we don't justify ourselves either, because we'll work till 3 a.m. at the arena and go to 8 a.m. at the convention center with 0 turnaround or the process of that turnaround either. So we're no better to ourselves when it comes down to it. We're helping the corporate greed in a sense by accepting work like that. And it's like even Greg Swizz has some good points. We should incentivize making our job work in a 40-hour week. We know it's not possible because we're always going to do shows on the weekend. But to incentivize that, to say, hey, this task take this long, we can make sections of our industry more realistic and less crazy. Obviously, we're going to have that shotgun. It's our industry. Where, you know, we're going to 3-day show has got to get in now. Because so-and-so wants it. But, you know, I mean, I think there's certain practices that we can break down within ourselves to.
I like that. It's kind of like the construction trade unions. A lot of them on Saturdays is time and a half and double time on Sundays. I mean, our Freeman Electrics is like that. So, it's going along and it's not to make more money. It's to deter the company to do that those days. It's kind of like meal penalties. It's not to make more money. You want to go on meal penalty. It's to deter the company from going into meal penalty. Otherwise, they're going to have to pay another hour or whatever.
I mean, and that's the whole thing, is that it's and that, like, it should compound and get worse. Like, because you should feed your employers. Like, you
should feed your employers.
Or not the employees. Yeah, exactly. So.
Cool, man. Well, any other things? I know we've been going on for a little bit more than an hour. That's what I usually go for, and we can go on forever because with your whole work history is this industry.
I can go on for days.
So, any last words you want to just say, like maybe to your coworkers or to the union, or?
Hey guys, I miss all y'all out there. I can say it's a lot of fun working with you on the bounce, but being at the Globe's healthier for me. I gotta say, it's definitely harnessed my energy in more productive and good for my life way, I gotta say. And hopefully it'll bleed out like it's been doing. You know, hopefully I can inspire others to step up. I feel, you know, it's tough. I think we gotta hold on to that edge that the older guys have given us to help make sure it's instilled, because I feel like there's going to be a relief is really what it is, and we're going to be able to take a breath and step back and be like, wow, there's a lot more help now. You know, and I think that, so we shouldn't be so wrapped up in like knowing, you know, our road and our things. I think we should have this broad picture of like, there is a future. 122 is growing, you know, especially with Chula Vista and the Gaylord Center coming up. That's going to be we're going to grow larger than we've ever thought. I mean, and it's, you know, let's go. So let's be ready for it, guys.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on, Brandon. I really appreciate you in this conversation. And, well, that's another episode of Union or Bust. So thank you all.
Thanks, all.